Hey there. So I've come up with 50 more troop/spell ideas. So I'm just gonna say them. I've drawn all of them, not just like drawn all the troops and not the spells. So enjoy. At number one is the skeletons, 0.1 housing space. Same as witch skeletons, but only 3 skeletons that, if used right, can do a good amount of damage, along with having some strength. At number 2, 3, and 5 is Ice Mite, Fire Mite, and Electromite. I decided to put them all here as they don't really have much for their, image, so I didn't need to make them separate. Fire Mite, 2 housing space. Fire Mite is the new COC troop, being similar to the Fire Spirit, but does poison damage along with doing extra damage with similar health, but being its own troop than, a structure that spawns it periodically. Ice Mite, 3 housing space. The Ice Mite slows down anything in its way, freezing them for 2 seconds. Then they are slowed down for 3 seconds, a troop version of the freeze. Electromite, 1 housing space. The Electromite is like the Fire Mite, but has less damage and no poison damage. Instead, it's able to chain up to 4 buildings close by. At number 4 is the Ice Giant, 20 housing space. The Ice Giant is a new type of giant, being similar to the Giant and Electro Giant mixed. It works like the Giant, but has a 6-tile range around it, slowing down any troops by 25%, along spawning a freeze and death. A chilly giant with a higher housing space but powerful version. Like the Ice Golem, but slows more, and the troop is generally weaker, but is more housing space. At number 6 is the Trigger spell, 2 spell space. Triggers all air and ground traps in its range of 12 tiles. For comparison, rage is 10. At number 7 is the Tombstone, 5 housing space. The Tombstone is a structure with low HP that spawns 3 skeletons every 2 seconds, with a total lifetime of 40 seconds, meaning a total of 60 skeletons can be spawned if the building is undamaged. At number 8 is the Meteor, 3 spell space. The Meteor works like the opposite of an earthquake mixed with a rocket. The Meteor does 4 times damage to structures, but generally does little damage to walls. At number 9 is the Skip spell, 4 spell space. At number 9 is the Skip spell, 4 spell space. The Skip spell is a very powerful spell, allows any troops to jump over the range, being 6 tiles of range. This only applies to troops, though, not heroes, pets, or machines. At number 10 is the Spear Goblin, 2 housing space. Spear Goblin is a range goblin that has twice the damage to resources. This means it can hit air, a stronger, slightly weaker, but more housing space goblin. At number 11 is the Barbarian Hut, 20 housing space. The Barbarian Hut spawns 3 barbarians every 4 seconds with a lifetime of 20 seconds with high HP. In total, spawns 15 barbarians if undamaged. At number 12 is the Goblin Hut, 6 housing space. Spawns 3 Sphere Goblins every 4 seconds with a total lifetime of 28 seconds with low HP. A total of 21 goblins, each 2 housing space, so it does sound like a good bang for your buck, but that low HP could be a problem. At number 13 is Mass, 2 spell space. The Mass spell heavily increases the size of all troops in its high range. Troops inside go at half the movement and hit speed, but do 2.5 times the damage and 2.5 times the health. A stronger but riskier rage spell. At number 14 is Shrink, 1 spell space. Turns enemy troops/heroes smaller, about half the size, doing half the damage and half the health, but double the speed and hit speed, with a small range but normal duration. While it may seem like a better poison, it can still be dangerous afterward. At number 15 is the Goblin Curse, 0 spell space. The Goblin Curse works differently from Clash Royale, having no damage amplification or poison damage. Instead, it is completely free and can turn dead enemy troops in its high range and long duration into goblins. Can be great if used with high DPS spells, troops, or heroes, but you should know you can only bring 10 if it's under 1 housing space, or 1 spell space. Pretty much the same. At number 16 is the Invincibility spell, 6 spell space. The Invincibility spell turns everything inside its medium range invulnerable with a 10-second duration. A stronger but more expensive heal spell, and could work somewhat like the Grand Warden's internal tome ability. At number 17 is the Igloo, 25 housing space. The igloo is a building that spawns 2 ice mites every 3 seconds, with a lifetime of 27 seconds with medium HP. In total, 18 ice spirits will spawn if undamaged. At number 18 is the Air Raid, 2 spell space. The Air Raid spell works similar to a graveyard, but all at once and temporary, spawning a large group of minions and bats to do a lot of damage. However, they are only temporary, disappearing after 2 seconds. The minions and bats levels depend on your spell level, but the count is the same, 8 minions plus 4 bats. At number 19 is the Battlefield, which is 2 spell space. Battlefield is similar to a graveyard, but quicker. It is low range, spawning a barbarian every half second. While 10 barbarians might not seem crazy, due to the range, a building or 2 will be destroyed and perhaps more. At number 20 is the Tornado, 1 spell space. The Tornado moves enemy buildings and troops, rotating them to the opposite sides in a high range. Can be great for moving strong buildings or enemies away from your troops. At number 21 is the Tarantulas. Spider does high damage, but does lower damage each hit. The first hit, it does 4,000 damage, and 100 less damage each hit, until it goes down to 100, but is also fast to make up for its significant downfall in damage. At number 22 is the Mecha Shark. The Mecha Shark is the first hero pet that does not move. Instead, shoots large strikes of electricity that does some damage in a high range that can chain 3 times. It could be comparable to a super wizard, but with higher HP, higher range, and higher damage, but cannot move. At number 23 is the Skeleton Mole. The Skeleton Mole spawns skeletons each hit of the hero, spawning 3 at once. Has medium health but slow digging speed. Cannot be damaged while moving though. At number 24 is the Robo-Roarer. A hero pet that's so strong that it defeats your own hero with a bite, then attacks on its own. Being a large metal dinosaur that can bite anything, doing medium damage, explodes walls when walking through them, and does more damage the less heroes there are. A lot if there's 0 left. At number 25 is the Minion Cave. 35 housing space. Spawns a minion every 2 seconds of a lifetime of 40 seconds. Meaning a total of 20 minions spawned if cave is untouched. The cave has low to medium HP. At number 26 is the Rocket Headquarters, 40 housing space. The Rocket Headquarters is a building that shoots rockets at the closest defense. It takes 8 seconds to shoot a rocket with infinite range, however the headquarters has skeleton HP. Luckily, if protected or placed right, its lifetime is 80 seconds, meaning you can use a total of 10 rockets on the closest defenses to the headquarters. At number 27 is the X-Cart. The X-Cart is a new siege machine similar to the cannon cart with a key difference. Instead of a cannon for a head, it's a smaller X-bow doing rapid shift damage at anything except walls in a higher range. Of course, it has higher health because it's a siege machine, meaning you can only bring 1 in a battle. At number 28 is the Fisherman, 1 housing space. A barbarian with a slower hit speed, less damage, and less health, but can grapple to anything 4 to 7 tiles away, along with stunning them for a second. At number 29 is the Light Witch. Definitely not a play on words from the Night Witch. A witch that spawns healers, 1 every 6 seconds, along with spawning a heal spell in death. 60 housing space. If you're wondering why this is an OP, sure, the healers are like 140 times the housing space of skeletons, but they're not ground, so they can't defend the witch, or Light Witch, which have pretty similar health, from any attackers. At number 30 is the Obliterator, a spell that instantly destroys all walls in its 4-tile range, working similar to 4 to 5 earthquake spells, depending on level, but with less range, 3 spell space. At number 31 is Baby Barbarian, 0 housing space. The Baby Barbarian is a barbarian with only 70 HP, with 21 DPS, however, it does half the damage to structures. You can only train 10 at most. At number 32 is the Wrecker, negative 10 housing space. The Wrecker is a negative space troop, and one of the only of its kind. You can only train 10 at most, meaning 100 more housing space otherwise if used. The Wrecker will be an enemy, only being able to place on the enemy territory. If it's not used, then you lose the battle no matter what. It's a faster, stronger giant that does double damage to heroes and can jump over walls, however with less HP. At number 33 is Green Lightning, 0 spell space. The Green Lightning is like a regular lightning with far more restrictions. It cannot hit defenses, enemies, town halls, or walls. It can only hit resources, however is free. Only 10 can be used in a battle though. Space P.E.K.K.A, 100 housing space. The Space P.E.K.K.A is a very tanky P.E.K.K.A that does twice the damage the first 5 hits. It death spawns a copy of your reinforcements. At number 35 is the Knight, 5 housing space. The Knight is a basic troop you unlock around the same time as a giant, so it's similar in some parts. It has a fast hit speed along with being very tanky, having 600 HP, and doing good damage, 70 damage per second. However, is very basic like the giant. Although it focuses on good stats, the giant has some stronger stats health-wise, but the Knight has more damage overall. At number 36 is the Sea Spell, 0 housing space. Sea Spell is like a poison, but even slower and does some damage. Taking 1 minute to do full damage, like Earthquake, it works by percentages. 1% every 1 second, so at best, enemies have 60% less health. At number 37 is the Water Golem. The Water Golem doesn't attack, but spawns a Sea Spell in death, but no Golemites. Along with more health, and shoots water out of its hand, slowing down structures by 3% and stacks the longer it's locked onto something. 25 housing space. At number 38 is the Wooden Knight, 3 housing space. The Wooden Knight is similar to the Knight with much more health, however it does no damage to defenses, including the town hall. Instead he works as a distraction and can still be good for cleanup. While he is tanky, he can still be taken out pretty easily. At number 39 is the Bomber, 4 housing space. The Bomber comes from the builder base, although with a new ability. Instead of just targeting walls, it does 4 times damage to walls, but targets anything. Although it has very low health, 63 at level 1. At number 40 is the Rune Spell. Based on the Rune Giant, the Rune Spell doubles the damage of all third hits inside its 10-tile range. Its duration is 10 seconds, and it's 2 spell space. At number 41 is the Siege Submarine. A submarine that cannot be placed on the ground, instead it can only spawn in water either from mermaids, sea spells, or water golems. Due to their rarity in being placed, the Siege Submarine will shoot 7 torpedoes doing high damage, around 700, to the closest structure to it that isn't destroyed. It does not shoot at town halls, then submerges. At number 42 is the Goblin Demolisher, 12 housing space. A troop with medium health that throws medium damage dynamite, however at 50% HP, moves as close to the town hall as it can, and when it reaches its destination, or dies, it explodes, doing high damage in a 5-tile range. The dynamite does double damage to resources too. At number 43 is the Goblin Machine, 25 housing space. Similar to the P.E.K.K.A, but does less damage, less HP with a faster hit speed. Shoots small rockets at nearby defenses it's not attacking, 3 at a time. Doing little damage but stunning them for a second. A powerful troop that can destroy, not necessarily by itself, but with other troops can be great. It does double damage to resources. At number 44 is the Sharpshot Dragon, 20 housing space. A green dragon with a large furrowed eyebrow that shoots green fireballs having infinite range, less damage, but much less health than a regular dragon. At number 45 is the Divine Titan, 80 housing space. Similar to the Electro Titan, but instead of an electric range, has a red aura, which makes any troop that goes into it invulnerable for 3 seconds. The Divine Titan does 275 damage per hit, however it does 4 times damage to buildings. At number 46 is the Skeleton Witch, 10 housing space. The Skeleton Witch is like a witch, however does not shoot, instead is melee. To make up for it, a Skeleton Witch spawns 12 skeletons instead of 4. At number 47 is the Bats, 0.5 housing space. A group of 5 bats, a group but less plentiful versions of the Night Witch, but for multiplayer. Obviously, because of their low health and how awful they would be with splash damage, they are 0.5 housing space. At number 48 is the Dark Witch, 20 housing space. A witch with only 1 health, no spawning skeletons, but does infinite damage at a range with a little bit of area. A powerful troop, but needs to be used right. Much less housing space than Mega P.E.K.K.A due to dying much, much easier. At number 49 is the Heal Wizard, 6 housing space. The Heal Wizard heals instead of damages. It heals by 460 HP every 1.7 seconds to the closest ally. Has some range, and has low health itself. Obviously a stronger but no damage druid. Isn't of the same stats as the wizard, just the damage is replaced by heal, if you're wondering. It has a little more health and a little more range. At number 50 is the Guardian, 42 housing space. A mix of the Golem and the P.E.K.K.A. Like the P.E.K.K.A, it does high damage with 400 damage per second, with a faster hit speed, but is tanky like the Golem, having around 6,000 in health with the same speed, along with protecting the closest troop to it, giving them a 50% damage reduction until the Guardian is defeated or is moved 8 tiles away. In conclusion, thank you for watching. I know the drawings weren't the best, but they were still at least pretty good, and see ya.